Hi everyone, I'm David from Valley's Managed Security Team. Today I would like to share how, when unusual activity appears on enterprise endpoints, we can detect the risk before it spreads by combining Security Pilot with CrowdStrike's EDR and managed services, enabling teams to take fast and effective response actions. I'll start with a commonly overlooked fact. Attacks rarely begin with obvious malicious behavior. Then, I'll explain why organizations need EDR to gain visibility into endpoint risks, and why EDR alone isn't enough, with MDR playing a critical role in real-world operations. Finally, through a few demos, I'll show how Security Pilot turns all of this information into something structured, manageable, and fully traceable. In the security incidents we deal with in real life, attacks rarely show up as something obviously malicious at the very beginning. More often, it starts with something subtle, a user workstation running built-in system commands at an unusual time, or an account accessing resources it normally never touches. When viewed in isolation, each of these actions looks technically valid and behaviorally reasonable. They are easy to dismiss as user mistakes or routine activity. The real problem is that, when these behaviors are treated as separate, unconnected events, the risk quietly accumulates in the background. And in many cases, by the time the situation becomes serious, organizations only realize that the warning signs had been there all along, just never treated as real risk. In today's endpoint environments, real risk is no longer just about whether there is malware or not. Most attacks don't begin with obvious malicious code. They often use legitimate accounts and trusted tools, gradually building up patterns of abnormal behavior over time. This is exactly why traditional antivirus solutions struggle in many situations. In practice, they often end up telling you that you are already infected, rather than catching the problem early. This is where EDR, endpoint detection and response, comes in. The core value of EDR lies in behavioral analysis, not just file-based detection. You can think of EDR as installing a 24/7 monitoring system on every workstation and server. It doesn't just block known attacks, it continuously watches for abnormal behavior on the endpoint. And when something suspicious or malicious does happen, EDR can clearly show you what happened, when it happened, and, through rich context, how the incident unfolded step by step. This gives organizations immediate visibility into what is actually happening on their endpoints. However, in real-world operations, we often observe a critical gap. Being able to see an issue doesn't always mean being able to respond in time. If we use a simple analogy, EDR is like having high-definition security cameras installed across your organization, giving you full visibility into what's happening on your endpoints. MDR builds on that by adding a 24/7 professional security operations team that can immediately assess what's happening and take action when needed. Once EDR gives you full visibility into endpoint activity, companies often run into the next very real challenge. There are just too many alerts. Among the alerts you see every day, some are false positives, some are gray area behaviors that need ongoing observation, and some are truly high-risk incidents that can't wait. The real challenge isn't whether you can see an alert, but whether this alert requires immediate action right now. In most organizations, making that decision is actually very difficult, because it doesn't just depend on having the right tools. It also requires security experience, understanding the full context of an incident, and the ability to make fast, accurate decisions. That's exactly why MDR exists. MDR is built on top of EDR and adds expert security personnel into the process. A third-party team of security specialists continuously monitors threats, investigates incidents, and takes immediate response actions once a real risk is confirmed. In other words, endpoint incidents aren't just detected by a system anymore. They are real people reviewing the alerts in real time, deciding whether it's a true threat, and stepping in immediately to execute the right response. For organizations, this is the key difference. Risks are no longer handled after they spread and impact operations. They are identified, assessed, and stopped before they escalate into real business damage. EDR is responsible for giving you full visibility into what's happening on your endpoints. MDR steps in to make the critical decisions and take action when it really matters. But from an organization's perspective, the next practical question is this: are these outcomes actually being managed effectively? This is where Security Pilot delivers its value. What you are looking at now is a dashboard that brings together the outcomes of EDR and MDR into a single visualized view. Instead of staring at scattered alerts, you can quickly understand the overall risk posture at a glance. In other words, Atlas isn't just another tool. It takes the capabilities and results of EDR and MDR and, through Security Pilot, turns them into insights and visuals that both management and IT teams can actually understand and use. With that, let me walk you through a few real demos. In many customer environments, endpoint risk often doesn't come from the core systems. It comes from devices that slip through the cracks, systems that weren't brought under management in time because of personnel changes or newly added devices. The issue isn't that there's no EDR in place. The real challenge is that administrators can't easily confirm at a glance whether every endpoint is actually covered. With Security Pilot's management view, you can quickly see how many devices are currently protected by EDR and compare that against your total number of assets. This makes it easy to identify whether there are endpoints that haven't been covered yet. As a result, security gaps are no longer based on guesswork or experience. They become something you can see immediately and fix right away. Many endpoint incidents are closely related to legacy systems or software versions that are outdated and already known to have vulnerabilities. The challenge is that end of life doesn't happen overnight. It approaches gradually, following an announced schedule, which makes it easy to overlook in day-to-day operations. With Security Pilot, we centralize the EOL status of endpoints and present it in a single, clear view. This allows administrators to quickly see which systems are approaching EOL or have already entered a high-risk state. As a result, teams can plan upgrades in advance, rather than reacting only after an incident has already occurred. Most organizations are already tracking vulnerabilities. The real challenge is this: there are simply too many of them. It's hard to tell which vulnerabilities actually matter to your environment and which ones should be fixed first. If you only look at a raw CVE list, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the volume and miss the truly high-risk issues. With Security Pilot, CVE information is presented together with its real impact on your endpoints. This allows administrators to clearly see which vulnerabilities affect the most systems and which endpoints carry the highest risk. As a result, teams can prioritize effectively, focusing their time and effort on the systems and vulnerabilities that truly require immediate remediation. A lot of the time, the incident was actually handled already. But when management or auditors ask about it, there's no clear record to explain what really happened. With Security Pilot, every incident, from when it was detected to how it was handled, is automatically recorded and can be reviewed directly in Security Pilot. So security doesn't just live in people's heads anymore. It becomes something you can point to, show clearly, and prove when needed. After going through the demo, you'll probably notice that what Security Pilot does is actually very clear. First, it helps you confirm whether your protection is really in place and quickly spot where the gaps are. Second, it makes risks visible early and helps teams act in time, including risks that haven't turned into incidents yet, like EOL systems or high-impact CVEs, so you are not always reacting after something goes wrong. Third, it keeps clear records of how each incident was assessed and handled, so your risk management is traceable and doesn't rely on memory. In short, EDR helps you see what's happening, MDR helps you respond quickly, and Security Pilot makes sure all of that can be managed continuously and actually leads to risk reduction over time.